Aleka Corwin is a blithe spirit and an artist I've had the pleasure of knowing for a number of years now. She's had a charmed and charming life, the details of which she'll share with us tonight. The fact that at this juncture she is devoted to making her remarkable masks, combined with knowing she was a student of Joseph Campbell at Sarah Lawrence College, makes his most famous quote, "Follow your bliss, and the universe will open doors for you where there were only walls," read like the proof of Aleka's pudding. She is open to life, generous, and, like her masks, a pure delight. More than that, I will not say, letting her tell you the rest. Please take it away, Aleka.
Hi, everybody. I'm delighted to be here and so happy that I have my women from SCWCA and guests. I'm so excited. So I'm going to tell you a little kind of a journey. I'm going to take you on a journey. And I do other things besides masks. I do, well, you'll see, I've started doing photo collages, and I'm doing some sculptures, and it has been a very interesting journey, and continues. And I continue to surprise myself, in a sense, with how ideas will come and I can act on them, and they turn into something that I can share with the world. It's a very mysterious process. Firstly, I think I need to sit higher, right? Am I cut off? Sit higher. So I come from New York City. I grew up in the apartments. My friend Franny, who's my high school friend, is here. She also grew up in apartments. And I've been creating artwork and working with children and teaching for my entire life. So I'm going to start reading something called Why Masks. I've taught masks to children, collected masks, made masks, and props for theatrical productions. In 2020, I spent a month in San Miguel de Allende, and I was awed by the colors, the textures, and the masks that I saw there. I've always loved to travel. I've always collected masks and puppets, and that's how I met Bill, my husband, on an airplane with masks and puppets. So I'm the child of a woman artist, and I grew up in New York, as I said, and we lived in New York during the 50s, 60s, 70s. And that was a time when it was very fertile for artists, but it was mostly male artists. This is my mom. And I'm going to actually read you a poem about my mom, who was an abstract artist and struggled quite a bit. She was the first feminist I ever met. And this is her story. I remember the smell of oil paints, linseed oil, and turpentine in our apartment, along with my dad's chicken soup, which he cooked a whole chicken, vegetables, water for a whole day until the meat fell off the bones. I remember my mom's studio in our rambling apartment on 162nd Street and Riverside Drive in New York. This was before she could afford to have a studio downtown. My mom used the dining room as her studio, with 2 easels, paintings stacked against the wall, and a ladder in the middle of the room. I used to read and sketch at the top of that ladder, being proud and powerful to be that high up. My mom, Sophie, had a lot of friends who were abstract artists. All of them struggled to get their work seen, exhibited, sold, and to make a name for themselves. They taught art, and Sophie let me take classes, but only after she approved their work. My favorite teacher was her friend Sylvia Rutkoff's. Sylvia was the only person I ever knew who used sand in her paint to build up her impasto surfaces. Sylvia became my lifelong friend and mentor until her death at 92. I remember once, many years ago, Sophie took my dad and me to the Cedar Bar in Greenwich Village, where all the abstract artists hung out. We were the only family sitting in the bar. My mom insisted on going because she wanted to make her presence as a woman artist felt. Most of the women artists in those days were usually married to male abstract artists. Lee Krasner to Jackson Pollock, Helen Frankenthaler to Robert Motherwell, Elaine de Kooning to Willem de Kooning. Only a handful of women made it to notoriety on their own. My mom was a feminist before there was even such a word. She fiercely believed, angrily believed, that she could be a mother and an artist at the same time. I remember how hard it was for her, how frustrating, but how determined she was. She learned welding so she could make iron sculptures. She was a tiny 5-foot woman among big burly men, but they were fascinated because her work was floral, vegetal, natural, curving pieces of iron to make giant plant-like sculptures. The smell of oil paints and early experiences of her life as an artist made me want to be an artist too. I believed I could be an artist, maybe a writer, have a family, all at the same time. And that's who I am today. All right, so this is a photograph of my mom and one of her sculptures. The sculptures were giant and she was tiny. So this is my early influence on being an artist. But what it taught me to do was not make giant things, right? Because there's no place to store them. I have all her work in a storage unit in California. I've been teaching children all along. I waited to have my own children until I met the right person. And I retired from the film industry to have children and started making art again. Even though during the summers I had been teaching and took my family with me at the Interlochen Experiential Learning Center, which was a summer camp, an international summer camp. And that's where I worked with paper mache, made masks, costumes, props, and got familiar with it. But when I had my own children, I started working on my art again. This is called The Ascension. This is my dog after she died, being led up to heaven by a celestial bunny. This is a sculpture that I did, which is actually at the Makery right now. And you can see the influence of children's artwork. Actually, what happened was I had a giant roll of paper and the kids at the end of class would just draw pictures. Miranda says, "Mom, you are a celestial bunny." That's funny. Anyway, so this is the animal's voyage to the underworld, and it's made entirely from designs that I stole from the scribbles on this piece of paper. Dinosaur Bob lassos the moon. Okay, I came up with this idea because we had lots of little animals. When we became empty nesters, Bill and I were stuck with all these toys and art supplies and little things, crayons. So I decided to use them and turn them into art. This is also at the Makery right now. This is the third thing that's at the Makery right now. This is made from, again, children's drawings, which I embellished, and ceramic tiles, and this is a little Mexican lizard down at the bottom. The show at the Makery is called Playtime, and we were allowed to use our toy art. Dioramas. So then I started doing dioramas. Because I'd worked as a set decorator for so many years, I was doing sets. I decided I would do little miniature sets or little miniature worlds. So these are the dioramas. This is called Lilith. This is Lucrezia Borgia. These are all
How big are these about?
They're very tiny. They're only about 8-inch square. Some of them were bigger. I also, all the way through the years, did what I now call, it was always called the calendar, but now it's called an artist's book, I discovered. So I did 40 years of calendars. This was the last calendar, 1979, which ended up not at all being the last calendar because I did it for another 30 years. So these I used to send out to friends, and when Bill and I got married, he sent them out to his clients. So the prints went from limited edition of 200 to probably 500 or 600. And some of you still have calendars, I'm sure. These are drawings, black and white drawings from the calendar. This is a page from the calendar. It was a recipe calendar. That's my daughter Miranda, who's here. As I progressed as an artist, I started joining groups. I had been part of the Feminist Studio workshop with Judy Chicago, but I didn't really get my sea legs in terms of what my voice was until I was out in the world a little bit more. And then that's when I fused mythological subjects, dreams, fantasies, and play. It's all playful. This is Namaka, who is a Hawaiian goddess of the oceans, sister to Pele, goddess of volcanoes. And these were in a show downtown in Coagula Gallery. Do you remember? Does anybody know that? Anyway, that was Matt Gleason, a wonderful character. I don't know if it still exists, but he did a Gods and Goddesses show, which I think is a great idea for a show. So this is part of his show. Oh, so I had been in Mexico. We were doing a poetry workshop in Mexico, and I was totally overwhelmed by all the color and masks and fabrics and papier-mâché stuff. And we came home, that was January of 2020, and we came home, and now came lockdown. So we were locked inside our house. It was very creative. Bill and I both worked like the Dickens. And during my walks, my solitary masked hilltop walks in Silverlake, I started collecting recycled objects from the recycling bins. It was a very fertile time. Okay, this is the COVID mask. So I decided to do COVID because it was so beautiful. Everybody would give me photos of COVID, and it was very beautiful. I wanted to turn it into something pretty, not so scary. This is the virus variant, the variant. This is flora, toilet paper tubes, paper mache, egg carts, applique, paper towel tubes, shredding. Nancy, I know you did a whole art piece about shredding, so this is an homage to you and your shredding. And this is Mother Nature, who is very frustrated by all of us. This is a dryad made from a Sprite, I think it was a Sprite carton that had lovely green colors. Again, toilet paper tubes, egg carton nose. This is Bill and I, self-portrait. I'm the one on the right. Bill's the one, the Minotaur on the left. That was a wine case, by the way. You know, a lot of people were ordering wine and computers and you name it. And it was all brimming out of the recycling bin. So it was a cornucopia of materials to work with. This was also a packing case. This is called Beyond Resilience. And that one, Beyond Resilience, was in a show in the Los Angeles Art Association. I thank God for all these associations I belong to, because I feel like I have a real strong community now. I'm also part of the Arroyo Arts. So we have LAAA, SCWCA, Arroyo, and now the Makery, which I love madly. Okay, this is Lion. He's made from boxes, paper mache, and packing materials. That paper stuff is the perfect material for a mane. This is Tigress. Also paper mache and boxes. I could glue boxes onto boxes, or boxes onto papier mache. Her ears are made of egg cartons. That's a very good medium to work with. This is Oso Peligroso. He's very dangerous, and he's made with paper mache boxes, which I glued on, and his ears are made from the Starbucks trays that you carry out, which are also a good material to use. This is Baby Demon Hates Humans. Baby Demon hates humans because humans destroy his environment. He loves to play in the woods and meadows and streams, and he's furious because we are taking them away. This is Baby Demon's pet, who's also pretty angry at the humans because Baby Demon likes to play in the fields and the streams and the meadows as well. Black and white. I discovered you could do masks, portrait of masks in black and white. So there's a few of these coming up. The animals. I have actually a poster with about 12 of these on in black and white, which I liked. That was fun making a poster. After lockdown, okay, we're released from home. We're out in the world. What will we do? Okay, we moved outside with sculptures to see what could happen. This is a double, you can't really see it. It's a double-faced mask, and that's an egg crate in holding the two faces together. And then the base, which I still use as a base in shows, was made on my travels. I found an old plastic shelf, and then I found cardboard boxes that fit over it perfectly, and then I painted them. So that's what the base is. Out of Body, a poem mask. I'm going to read you another poem, okay? Because you can see the words on this mask. This was in a show for Day of the Dead. This is called Out of Body. Sagging flesh and bone on bone. Inhale in, exhale out, and inspiration carries me off. I am weightless. I am invisible. I am magma, red hot molten clay. I am Pele of the volcanoes. I am formless, uncontained. I am Gaia, mother of all things. I am a swallow swooping on silver puffs of air. I am a hawk riding an updraft. Below me, the glistening world. I am the vigorous wind. I am the scent of night blooming jasmine. I am the sound of children playing far away, carried to me by the breeze. I am the smell of I am the smell of homemade bread baking. I float back to my body and walk down the stairs and find a still warm loaf of bread on the kitchen table. Next, okay, then we went to Italy on an artist's retreat. I learned how to do cyanotype. So I had brought in my suitcase, I brought all my coffee filters because I love them so as a medium to work with. And I happily worked with watercolor and cyanotype on coffee filters. And this is just below the surface. This was also in a show at the Gallery 825, and it floats off the wall. It's propped up on foam core, so it floats. This was the other piece that I did on our artist retreat in Italy, and we got to cut up, sort of shamelessly cut up art books and use papers, and I had a lot of fun doing this. This is a rotating sculpture called Mother Nature's bustier. I did this for the Los Angeles, for the Arroyo Arts. I think it was all Arroyo artists who did a show called Bravado, Bravado. And it was 24 women artists interpret the bra. So this is, and she rotates. The exterior has everything in the world on it, and the interior is an oasis and you can see butterflies. Recycle pastoral. Okay, this was an Arroyo project for the Audubon.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the Audubon Society. They wanted something that would not decompose because it would be outside it was outside for about 6 weeks. So this is made of plastic bottles, pill bottles, a plastic squirt bottle. This is a lunchable container in the middle. And foam, which I got from my son-in-law, who's a DP, and he got a new camera. He gave me the foam, and it turned out to be the most delicious medium because it can carve. You can carve it or cut it with scissors, and it doesn't shred the way styrofoam does. So this piece was outside, and I got a lot of pleasure when families, on the day that we were all there talking about our work, there were families, and the families would come up and they would be overwhelmed by all the things that they throw away that you could use. So I would give them a tour. Up in the corner, there's a bee and a mousy, and down at the bottom, there's a field of poppies and a nest and birds and lizards and squirrels and a blue heron. But someone looked at me and he said, no, it's a toucan. And I thought, okay, it's a toucan. That's great. Cats in gardens, cats in jungles. I love cats. So this is also, these are photographs that are done with puzzle pieces and drawings that I painted or decorated and cut paper and bottle caps. You can see there's at least one bottle cap working here, but I love bottle caps. That's my newest passion. And remarkably, you can sometimes find collections of bottle caps or go into a bar and people will give you bottle caps, which is very, very fun. Pulp Dragon. He's in a show online at LAAA right now. And this is for the pop art show. So he is made of a computer box. This was another great find during the pandemic. I have actually a lot of big pieces of cardboard stashed away in my storage room because these boxes, I'll never find them again, I think. People don't buy computers and cases of wine. Wonder Woman, she's made from old comic books and egg carton, and there's some toilet paper roll in there. Okay, this is Circe. This I made, I had a piece that was in a kind of mysterious 3D show online. Of course, I had to have help getting it to the state where it could be on in this world that you go in. It's a virtual world that you go in. And this piece, actually without the Barbie doll, was in that show. But I liked the box very much. I didn't want to, and it lay around and it sort of got half destroyed. And I thought, I'm going to turn this into something else. And then I found the Barbie doll and decided I wanted to use her as a goddess if I could. So I turned her into Circe. And those of you who know who Circe is, if you don't, I'll tell you. Circe is a character in the Odyssey who has her own island. And when marauders come to her island, Barbie as Circe. And I discovered that I was doing a kind of a long range series called Women Who Are Misinterpreted by History. And history is HISTORY. So that I took these women who were turned into witches or sorceresses, or Lucrezia Borgia, who was maligned as a poisoner when in fact that was just a rumor. And Lilith, who was Adam's first wife. He had another wife before Eve, but she was unmanageable. And they booted her out and she became a powerful sorceress in her own right. So this is part of an ongoing series about women who were misinterpreted. Gaia, mother of them all. And this is for our show that's coming up, the round circle show. And this, as you can see, so this is a departure. I haven't done flat things in a long time. So I couldn't, even though it was flat, I still had to make it a little 3D, just a little, with buttons and pistachio shells, which the idea I got from Miranda, my daughter, who's an artist. And lots of sequins. My favorite place in the world is Remainders in Pasadena. If you don't know it, you should go because it has all these donated and leftover art supplies, and they sell them very cheap. And things like pom-poms or sequins are buttons are things that they sell. Okay, next slide. Or maybe there is no next slide. Oh, there is. Okay, this is Devi. She's a nature spirit. And she's going to be in the Aperire show, which is the Arroyo artist show at the Makery. I couldn't stop. So I've added more feathers. And these feathers came from Nancy. This is your sister's feathers. Nancy
Okay.
gave me boxes of things from her sister, who was an artist, and a very interesting. Every time I use her materials, I feel like I'm channeling her. It's just wonderful, wonderful. And I use her material. The feathers are like an awakening for me.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, isn't that great? Okay, next slide. I don't know if there is a next slide.
Mm.
Ah, photo collage, Lucky Bunny. Okay, so this is another departure for me, or just a new growth. I think it's not a departure, it's just an outgrowth. So this is cut up photographs for a photo show. I'm not a photographer, but I do photography, but I don't have any technical skills. So, but I do have skills in cutting things out with scissors. So that's what I did. And I glued them in. It's three-dimensional. It's raised up with foam core. And there are a few real silk flowers in there.
Here we are.
That's me working on my back deck making paper mache. It's quite fun. I used to do paper mache with all these children at summer camp. We made masks, and could be 40 years ago. I was making masks 40 years ago, but I didn't know I would end up making masks, and here I am.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Aleka. That was just so terrific. I pulled another quote from Joseph Campbell that I wanted to share, and I probably should have shared it when you had that mask. It was the death mask, or you did the mask for the Day of the Dead.
Yeah.
So I just thought this was really fascinating. Joseph Campbell, one of his quotes is, "Life is but a mask worn on the face of death, and is death then another mask?"
Yes, I love that quote. I
Yeah.
love that quote. Love
So,
it.
well, that's all that I have at the moment. I want to open it up to questions. Oh, you know what? Let's stop the screen. We'll stop the screen share. And so we can all sort of be together here in the gallery view. And does anyone have any questions that they wanted to ask Aleka? You can just sort of raise your hand or jump in, certainly unmute. Linda Levy.
I just want to say I love this work, Aleka. I haven't seen any of this, and I love the dimensionality of everything and the colors and the concepts that you put together. I'm sorry I missed the first part because I'm got a little confused with daylight savings time, but I just want to tell you this is thrilling work.
Thank you. Thank you.
And the COVID story is fantastic.
Yeah. Well, I just found something I wanted to read. Making masks became an antidote to the fear we were all feeling. If I could create funny, scary, satirical masks of creatures and of COVID, I could entertain myself and make other people smile. So that was what I was doing.
It's wonderful.
I just wanted to say, I think you're so talented.
Thank you, Nancy.
You're so talented, and your use of colors are just so fabulous.
Yeah, they really are.
Yeah, and I can see how travel and goddesses and colors and it all goes together. It's like a progression. It's just fantastic. I'm really happy for you.
It's interesting that I use I was a mythology at Sarah Lawrence. I studied mythology. I was a painter and French, and then I went to France for my junior year. And but I use them all. I'm using, the influence of the mythology that I studied and the art that I created. By the way, I had a teacher at Sarah Lawrence, a male teacher, who said to the women he was teaching, "None of you will be painting in 30 years." And I couldn't figure out, why, I told that to my mother, and she was furious, my mother, and she gave me this list of women painters to bring into him. So I used that influence and traveling every time I go, and every time I go to a show or a museum, I think, what can I learn from this? You know, and it's a great way of looking because, oh, some people would say, what could I steal from this? You know, but it's a wonderful way of looking at things, because if you're creating artwork or you think in terms of artwork, then everything is an influence.
Well,
So
I urge you to turn it around and say, what can they learn from you?
thanks.
And I just wanted to say too, I thought that your writing was so wonderful that you shared with us tonight. So that poem that you read that you had put into the mask, you know, and what you were reading about your mother, you know, to start us all off with. I think that your writing is just terrific. So I would love to see you do some writing to go along with these mythological female characters that you're restoring their reputations and
I guess that's what I'm doing. That's pretty funny. Yeah.
Fantastic. Honey, you broke hearts and legs. So here's my question. About 5 years ago, we were driving back from a party. It was late at night, and we were having a conversation about the organization you wanted to start, which was Adult
Children of dead artists.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah. ACDA, Adult
Yes,
Children of Dead
because
Artists.
my mom entrusted me with all of her work. You know, it's exhausting and I don't know what to do with it, and I have to get rid of it. And I'm going to probably end up doing the same thing to my children. And here's one child up in the corner. Wave to everybody. Miranda, wave. She's a wonderful artist, and Miranda takes recycling much further than I do, because she won't even, she's using recycled fabric and texture, and she won't buy thread. She creates, why don't you mention, how do you create your, how do you put your fabric together?
I use a bookbinding tool to puncture holes in the fabric, and then I cut fabric up into strips and weave it through.
Oh,
But she doesn't want to buy materials, more junk for the earth, right? Is that what it is? And I feel great using things. I feel like less junk for the landfill if I'm turning. So I'd love to do this in schools, or encourage other people to do it in schools, you know, to take the Lunchable containers from the lunchroom and turn them into artwork, or take tin cans and turn them into artwork.
So part of my question is, in this conversation you and I were having about the ACDA or whatever it's called, one of the things that we discussed, and that I remember overhearing you talk about with other friends who also had dead artists for mothers or parents, was the ambivalence of the child of the artist about being an artist. And at one point you said, you know, I'm not even really sure. I mean, what's the point? And I was sort of like, no, my wife is this wonderful artist. What is she saying? What turned you around from that point in, say, 2019, where it was a point at which you were sort of questioning the purpose of it all?
I mean, I still question the purpose of it all. I don't know if if there's anybody creating artwork who doesn't stop and say, why am I doing this? You know, who's going to appreciate this, and where is it going to end up? But and this is a question I've been wanting to ask other artists. I mean, why do we make art? It has to be some sort of out of what? Out of love for visual stimulation? What is it for?
You know, I'm going to jump in.
Why not?
I think that also it was I got to read all these Joseph Campbell quotes tonight and looking for this stuff. And I love his work. And I, of course, don't retain it after I read it all like, twice, like 10 years ago or something. But he has this wonderful quote, and it's about being a spirit and being alive. You enliven the world. So I think it's that you are doing this stuff that is so lively, and you are enlivening us all with what you do. And it's the colors that you put together and the patterns that you put together. I mean, and I think of, like your colors are just so wonderful. And I think of Bonnard, whose color is like putting one one weird color next to another weird color and it just ignites it, and then Rothko, like took from Bonnard and he started putting all these weird colors together. So it's just like you just putting those colors together just sort of ignites, the world around it and the people who get to view it. So that's why I would think it's important. But I mean, I've got, you mentioned my sister. My sister passed on. I have her paintings, I have some of them. And it's like, what do I do with them? I don't know, We're going to talk to Karen Schiffman about that. I think, Karen, you had a Saturday salon about this, didn't you? And
well, we've talked about legacy, of course, but I just wanted to say that, after reading about literally thousands of artists, I think at this point, but most of them say they make art because they have to.
Yeah.
It's a drive within them. They have to make art or they just won't be able to function. And it's a way of coping with yourself. I mean, in a way, it's as we know, it's a very solitary activity for the most part. It is a very personal activity. I think most artists do it because they can and because they do. I don't think most artists think about what will happen to all this work when I'm gone. They don't think about it that way. I mean, but I do think if you go into really reading about artists, of course, there is this idea about being an artist, whether you're a musical composer or a theatrical, performer, what have you, is that you are leaving something of yourself on this earth when you leave. There's something of you that lives on, and not people who are not creatives basically can't say it for the same way that we can say it as creative people. So I think that's anyway, that's my 10 cents. I have no idea what to do with all the art. My son has already told me that everything I have is probably going in a dumpster. So I'm so thrilled to hear that. Anyway.
Karen, the thing that was most interesting to me is about reading about other artists. And when you read about the abstract expressionists and the arguments they had in the Cedar Bar and the impressionists and the arguments they had about theory and what these theories on canvas were doing to the viewers, what they did to the viewers. And a friend of mine who's a successful Midwestern artist, how are you doing? I've been depressed lately. I don't have a decent agent and I don't know how many, I don't know what's the point. And part of me said, oh, I want to make him feel better. But then I said, wait a minute. There are thousands, literally thousands of people, maybe not millions, but who've walked past his beautiful, exquisite canvases and been deeply affected. And what Nancy, you just said about Aleka's work, that's real. And it's hard for the artist because it's that egoistic, so on. But that is a reality, that art that's really interesting and that grabs you and that you stand and look at for whatever reason, whether it's Aleka's incredible design sense and colors and humor and things that are political and so on, or whatever, that's a real effect that it has on the viewer.
In response to this last discussion, I just want to say that when I look at your work tonight, it's bringing me such joy. I mean, it's actually reaching me. It opens up a completely different dimension of experience for me. And I think that art, whether it's writing or, poetry or visual art, it's like having another sense or another sensory channel that brings something to the world that we can't get through logic or, geometry.
That's great. That's good.
And that I need it for sure. And I feel that way about writing, which is something that I do, that I can't express even in normal conversation, the things that I can express through both the poetry and the nonfiction that I write, because it makes shapes that weren't there before.
I'm also just going to mention that in regards to, because I teach a class about writing to visual art, in doing that, science tells us that looking at art actually has a physiological effect on us. So it's like being in love. So you get that when you see the art, you go to the museum, you get those, juices going that get going when you're in love, And so that's something that the artist is doing for, for generations to come, if they're lucky enough to get stuck in a museum, but if not, they still,
Momentary. It's a momentary.
yeah, it's for a while you're here.
It's like guy who only lives for one day.
Yeah. So, okay, so we're gonna go to Nancy Mills had her hand up too.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, I started painting late in life. And so for me, art has really, it has a tremendous healing dimension to it. I mean, tremendous healing dimension. And I think that's one of the reasons why I relate so much to Aleka's art, because there's so much healing involved in the mysticism that she paints with. But what's interesting, because I started late in life, there's a part of me that uses art as a spiritual healing tool. But then there's a part of me that feels as though my art is a legacy. And differently than what Susan mentioned, there hasn't been a day that's gone by since I started painting that I haven't thought about the legacy of my work, only because the thought of keeping it on the floor in a bin or giving it to relatives or what have you just really is very appalling to me. So I have a very, I think, unique perspective in that, to me, it would be a travesty if the work that I've created ended up being dumped or thrown away or what have you. And so I'm raising it because it became a point in this conversation. And I think there are artists out there who really do think about our legacies.
I wanted to jump in and say that part of the reason why I did those calendars, artist books, but calendars for so many years, really 40 years, was that it was a way to create art that people could use.
Right.
The calendar, they could throw it out at the end of a year, although a lot of people kept them. I'm still getting people call me and say, do you want 1979? And I say, yes, I do. That was very satisfying. I had I didn't feel quite so, not useless, but it felt like my work was being used for a purpose. And I loved that feeling.
Mhm.
And I think that's why people do public art. I think that must have the same important satisfaction that other people are going to see this and use it and walk by it and admire the electrical box that's painted so beautifully. I like that. That's really cool.
Yeah, I had a question on a different topic. Your piece that was like, I think it was called The Married Couple, and it was you and your husband, representations of you and your husband. I was really curious as to if you would explain why you chose to depict each of you in the way that you did and how that reflects your personalities.
Oh, okay. That's an interesting question. And I actually had to write descriptions for a show that I had at a gallery on Melrose. I had 13 pieces. And she's finally, a week or two in, someone said, well, why don't we have descriptions of these pieces? And so Deborah, who might even be here, said, could you make descriptions of these pieces? So I described the Minotaur as someone who was capable of great tenderness and passion, but also of anger and fury, and so he was a sort of the beast and the man at the same time. And then the other character, who's me, is full of eyes. And that made me think about, she's got probably 10, 12 eyes looking out. It's the hair, but it's also got eyes in it. And it's like the artist as hunter-gatherer. So you have to be alert in all directions. You have to, as I will drive by something on the side of the road, and I see it as I'm driving by, probably dangerously so, but and I'll pull over. If it's something I can use, I'll put it in the car, much to the chagrin of my family. But so it's, as a hunter-gatherer, you have to be able to run, pounce, hunt. All your senses are alert. So that's
Yeah.
what the character was.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great. And Susan Spector,
Cool,
you
that's
have,
really interesting. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Aleka, thank you. And I have fallen in love with your work, and particularly the whimsy of it is and the colors, of course. I'd like to know your process. Do you sketch something and then start gluing items together? Do you sit with a box and go, I can do this or that with it? How do you begin?
Oh, that's a really fun question to answer. Well, a lot of times I pick up these molded cardboard things. It's called pressed cardboard. And they press them in shapes so you can lay a wine bottle in, or a computer in, or something, a lamp or whatever. And I pick them up and I look at them, and sometimes I actually see a face peering out at me or something like that. You can see, if you put on the certain lens in your eyes, you can see the artwork. I think the sculptors used to say that about chunks of marble, that they could see the sculpture in there. There's that. I don't usually sketch anything out, because unless I'm presenting it to someone as a proposal, in which case, I have to do a sketch of what I want to do, and then they'll say yes or no. But it's intuitive. It's totally intuitive. I will see something, except that the big plaque. Actually, I got that from an African mask that I saw, which was completely circular. And I thought, oh my God, that's the mask I want to do. That's what I want to do for the circle show. So if you talk amongst yourselves, I'll go get this thing to show you. I'll show you the African mask.
How do any of us as artists, get started? What is the process that we go through to get from nothing to something wonderful, if we're lucky?
yeah, and I'm going to mention, just while she's out of the room, what she also mentioned when we were doing our little run through rehearsal, and she didn't get to it tonight, was that the Judy Chicago workshop that she was involved in, she did some, what did you do for the Judy Chicago thing that led to your career in doing set design? And
I did walk-in dream environments that, I never had the opportunity to do that before. So this is at the Chenard Art School, which is big, echoing, empty building, that we took over for the Feminist Studio Workshop. And I just went out and found fabric and hung it, and things hanging, so you could walk inside this dreamy thing of kind of diaphanous, multicolored fabric. And someone came to see the show and looked at me and said, you could make money doing this for film. And I thought, what? Money? What? Because the film world and the art world in 1973 were as far from each other as you could possibly get. So that's what started me on that trajectory. I volunteered at AFI. I got jobs from my friends at AFI, and everybody went out into the world. And I did that for over 15 years, and it was really fun, really, really fun.
yeah, no, it's great. It was a great door in from, just by way of Judy Chicago. I thought that was a terrific connection.
Yes.
Again, and This is back to Joseph Campbell. This is like following your bliss. You're doing this thing with Judy Chicago, and it leads to the doors opening, like into the film and television world. So, and on and on. So did you find your mask that you were going to show to us?
Huh? Here. Can you see?
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. That's great. There's a little reflection, but we get the gist. That's fabulous. So that's a photograph of a mask, an African mask.
Yes, this is a poster that I found in my wonderful place remainders of a Kifwebe face mask from Zaire.
Wow.
And I looked at it and I thought, oh, that's what I want to do for my circle.
Yeah, that's perfect.
So that's the when you get influences from everywhere in the world, in the universe.
Well, it's not really a question. First of all, I'm just super proud to be on here as your daughter. I've been through a BFA and an MFA, and this is the best artist talk I've ever seen. But I also wanted to say, in the spirit of Purim, which is this weekend, this presentation is so appropriate because it's about the spirit of masks and how masks sort of are this, like this dual presence between concealing the truth while also unveiling the truth at the same time. And they say that when you wear a mask or you try to disguise yourself, it reveals who you really are. And I think what's cool about hearing this presentation in the context of COVID, which I've never actually heard. I mean, I've lived amongst these masks before and I look at them almost every day, but hearing them in this chronological story in reference to COVID is so fascinating because, we think that you're taking this trash and turning it into something beautiful, which you are, but I also think this is so revealing because you're also talking about how much stuff people were ordering during that time, which I think is such a funny and also a little bit depressing anecdote to your work. And I think it's important to mention it really is, like art, talking about the importance of art, you're sealing in the narrative of these crazy times that we just went through and are still going through. So talk about, relevant work and art that's made out of COVID. This is so perfect.
One thing that's always struck me as being a musician, I've played some art openings throughout the years, is how people just walk by for 1 second, then they talk to somebody else and go get a cup of coffee or leave. And compared to writers and musicians, it's like you only get a one-shot deal for people. I'm really glad that this is online and it's recorded. And even though the stuff is three-dimensional, I certainly would like to see it in a book, although now, it is recorded on video. But there are so many things to look at and your choice of colors. I've never seen anything like it. So I'm hoping that the rest of the world can see it.
So, well, thank you all for being here. This is so cool. And also, I will mention that these do go on to the Women's Caucus, Southern California Women's Caucus for Art YouTube channel. And the other ones that have been recorded, they're there to enjoy. And it's quite a variety. And any members of the Women's Caucus who are here tonight who haven't done a talk and who would be interested in doing a talk, don't be shy. And because I personally, I'm co-chairing this with Sandra Muller. And one of the reasons I'm doing it, I think it's so fabulous that we are recording these things and we are putting them there on the archive. And so it's a record, it's a legacy that we're doing. And it's just, they're terrific. They're wonderful. So thank you all for joining in. And thank you, Aleka, for being you.
Yay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.